What's good, family? Shout out to my doggy, Frank Finding Nemo, Warren, for boosting up your man the YB. Stressful coin situation. So, for most of you dons will know by now, Tyson, Fury, and Dillian, the Chilean shite, had their first media event, which was, thankfully, via Zoom call on it was on Zoom, bottom line. Public media Zoom call. Now, I can't lie to you. Initially, when I saw it advertised, I saw a media call. I thought, wow, dead. Because normally, historically speaking, media calls are on the phone. And they just go on the phone, it's dead. But it was on video. Now, I've got another video coming soon, explaining the things that actually went on the Zoom call. But let me tell you this now. From what I understand, Dillian Whyte refused to actually go head to head with Tyson, which explains why there was no actual intermingling. Essentially, it was 25 minutes or 20 minutes of Fury's woofing, and then it was 20 minutes of Dillian Whyte woofing, which was dead. And to be honest with you again, both of them, man, Dillian and Tyson, were kind of moist. It was all a bit weird, to be honest with you. If anything, actually, Dillian was more smoky than Fury was. Fury sounded a bit, I don't know, it was off. I wanted to see Fury roasting Dillian, but that leads me into the next point. The reason the balance of power has changed, i.e., the reason, if you actually listen to what Tyson Fury was saying throughout the press call, again, he was very he wasn't roasting Dillian. Bear in mind, Tyson Fury was leaking the nudes Dillian Whyte was sending to Dean Whyte, frilly in white knickers, all that kind of stuff. There was none of that. If anything, in fact, one of the interviewers said to Tyson Fury, Tyson, what do you think about Dillian not turning up to the earlier press conferences? Fury said, oh well, it didn't really matter anyway, he's there now, he's here now, and that first media event wasn't even a real press conference. I was like, Now, some of you man are thinking, well, YB, who cares if Tyson Fury's gone moist? Well, you've seen the title of this video. Essentially, the reason Tyson Fury's kind of energy level towards Dillian's shifted 180 is because of the last few days of reports, yeah? Because what else you'll notice is, don't forget people, what's the biggest news event that people are interested in? Especially now, I mean, before Dillian Whyte turned up, whilst Dillian Whyte was silent, of course, Dillian Whyte's absence, Dillian Whyte losing his tongue, was a big deal. But that's done now, he turned up. So outside of that, what was the biggest thing? What was the first question every single interviewer should have been asking? Tyson Fury, what's your comment on Daniel El Trapahan Kinahan? Oops. And guess what? There was 15 interviewers, not one person even answered a smidgen of it. And I spoke to one of the individuals on the call earlier today, and they told me there was basically a pre-screening phone call. Anyone who got a license, anyone who was allowed onto the media call was told, listen, under no circumstances are you to ask anything about the Kinahan situation. I mean, and that's obvious anyway, because let's get something straight. Oh, it's obvious anyway, bottom line, because how can you not ask that? Yeah, we've seen Bob Arum. I mean, if anything, I'd have been saying, listen, Tyson Fury, we've heard Bob Arum's. I mean, no one even asked Bob Arum on his statements. But the question should have been to Tyson Fury, Tyson, Bob Arum's completely got rid of Daniel Kinahan. What's your position on your manager? Oops. But notice there were none of that. Not even a bit of it, which is it's a letdown, in my opinion. And this is what I was telling you the other day. I believe the next 2 weeks, don't expect nothing coming out from Tyson Fury. They're going to push it all under the rug. Because don't forget, they control the narrative here. And that's where Dillian Whyte comes into this. Because Dillian Whyte, think about it, the same reason Tyson Fury, before the whole Kinahan thing kicked off, was going to come on here and say to Dillian Whyte, why do you have men in your camp who have taken your second name? Are you married? Are you on the DL, Dillian? That's what was going to happen. I mean, you saw it. You saw Tyson Fury reposting pictures of Dillian in his knickers and his sexy panties for Dean and all this kind of stuff. That was the vibe. Tyson Fury was roasting. Now, Watch that press conference. Tyson Fury didn't have one roasty bone in his body. He was like, oh no, Dillian's alright and we're getting along like a house on fire. I thought, and to some extent, it is a shame that this whole Kinahan thing started now, because it wouldn't really surprise me if the feds did it on purpose, to be honest. Let's cuck the biggest event. You know what I'm saying? The feds often work like that. Yeah? Let's get it when they... I mean, let's say they tried to do it after the fight. Who would really care? There had nothing going on. Yeah? So, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if the feds did it knowing this is going to be the most impactful point. Biggest fight in the history of Britain, more or less. But anyway, like I said, the balance of power in terms of the balance of power is shifted now. If anything, having watched the media press conference, the Zoom press conference, I'd say Dillian Whyte was actually the one on the offensive. Dillian Whyte was saying things like, "Oh, Tyson Fury ducked me." 100%. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dillian Whyte was sitting there saying, "Oh, Tyson Fury ducked me for years, and I had to go to court to get him in the ring with me." And meanwhile, Team Fury just sit there cucked. I thought, what the fuck? And this shows you what's gone on behind closed doors. What's gone on behind closed doors? Ever since this Kinahan thing kicked off, Dillian Whyte's gained exponential leverage. Because he could say, listen, I'm going to be out here airing out all your dirty business or whatever. Do you know? Even though Dillian Whyte won't know direct dirty business, but he can be out here saying, listen, Tyson, why are you working with a sniff dealer? Oops. Yeah? And from what I understand, they've both entered into an agreement now where it's going to be all above board. I mean, Tyson Fury again. And I can't lie to you. For me, yeah, it is a letdown. I'm not no Man fan, and people know I've made it clear to you, man. The reason I came down hard on Dillian was because I want to be entertained. Now, this whole thing was the opposite of entertainment. Yeah, like I said, you had Tyson Fury, the man who's known for interesting press conferences, talking about, oh, I think fighters should be fined for kicking off at the press conference. Yeah, I think we should all act like professional sports people. I thought, what the... And this shows you that, or it implied to me that Tyson Fury is vulnerable around this Kinahan situation. It almost implied to me he was almost saying, oh, yeah, now, because historically speaking, Tyson Fury's been the one who's been the one kind of on the offensive at press conferences. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Him saying, oh, we need to shut it all down. But obviously, from his point of view now, he doesn't want no smoke at press conferences, does he now? Because at this particular point in time, he's vulnerable. So of course he wants people to be fined, and he wants it to be less likely for him to be aired out about the whole Kinahan situation. And the fact that they haven't addressed it, the fact that not one... you man, tell me what you think. Do you think it's a coincidence not one interviewer didn't ask, not Bob, not Fury, didn't even get close to it, just completely acted like nothing happened? And that's what I've been told is going to happen for the next 2 weeks. And I did tell you this. I told you, listen, most likely what's going to happen, Bob Arum's given Tyson Fury an ultimatum. In the long term, Bob Arum and ESPN are not going to work with Tyson Fury. Now, I wasn't sure... Sorry, they're not going to work with Tyson Fury if he decides to continue being managed by Kinahan. But what I wasn't sure about was whether or not the affiliation was kind of close enough to pull the event now. Because in some circumstances, companies, big global corporations, when you're cancelled, you're cancelled. They don't care. They'll lose 50 million on this fight or 20 million on this fight, because in the long run, it's worth much more to them to maintain their brand and not be associated with narco-trafficantes like Kinahan than it is to push on forward with the event. But from what I've heard and from what we've observed here, clearly ESPN and Bob Arum are going to go the other route. Okay, we're only 10 days away from the fight. Let's just shut all the media stuff down and plough on forward and try and keep our head in the sand and just try and manage the room, essentially. And you can bet your bottom dollar from now to the fight day, you won't hear nothing about this from the controlled sources, which is a shame from a fan's point of view. And if anything, it's been a few days now since the whole thing came down from the feds. Bob Arum, within 24 hours, had removed his association. But guess what? And this is what I was telling you. Guess what? We haven't heard nothing. In fact, even Michael Conlan, Michael Conlan came out, he's also removed his association. Tyson Fury hasn't done none of that. If anything, this would have been a great opportunity to do that, wouldn't it? He could have come out today and said, listen, off the rip, yeah, I don't support this, I'm not with the guy, I've also left him. He hasn't done that, which implies Tyson Fury intends to continue forward with MTK, with Kinahan, which isn't a massive shock, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens after this fight, because I'll be surprised if anyone will touch him with a barge pole after that. Although, like I said in the video, to be fair, he hasn't actually been indicted yet. He hasn't even been charged yet. There aren't even actually, there's allegations, but there's nothing, there's no witnesses, or they haven't got nothing to go on. He's still not been convicted. And that is often how things work. But like I said before, look at Showtime. Showtime had a show on, a pay-per-view show, Tank Davis versus Rolly Romero. That was scheduled. A female came out and said, oh, I've been nonced, I've been Epsteined by Rolly Romero, and they pulled the show. So, it's kind of like, yeah, obviously Tyson Fury is leagues above in terms of his presence, but still, I mean, we're talking about killings here, and we're talking about shipping tons of the A1, yeah, tons of the Fire White, 100%, and the Power Dark. That's what we're talking here. We're talking huge influence, huge negative influence as well. And Fury, the fact that Fury hasn't come out and said he cutting ties, tells you most likely what's going on here. He ain't going to leave. He's going to try and ride this one out. So it's going to get interesting. But either way, thinking about this whole thing here, about the NDAs, about all the people being told to be quiet, well, I'm not sure what to say. Am I shocked? No. But you'd like to think that, and it shows people just sell out, don't they? No one's got any backbone. It's interesting. You see IFL TV. Imagine, yeah, if it was someone, obviously, I'm not going to even criticise IFL TV because they're just doing what everyone else is trying to do for the bag. Yeah, everyone's selling their booty hole for a bag at some level. But it is interesting because you can bet your bottom dollar, if there was some other scandal going on with someone else, IFL TV would be all over it. IFL TV ain't said nothing. No one else, everyone is acting like nothing happened. It's really quite odd. If it wasn't for Bob Arum coming out, we wouldn't, innit? If it wasn't for Bob Arum coming out, we haven't heard nothing from no one at the top level. Of course, Michael Conlan and all the bottom feeders. I mean, don't make a scrap of difference, does it? But really, it's Tyson Fury. Who else is there? Well, really, it's just Fury. Billy Joe, he washed anyway. Really, right now, it's just Tyson Fury that matters. So what happens after the fight, I'm extremely intrigued to see. But clearly, we know the pattern Tyson Fury taking right now. And he doubling down with his mans. What we don't know as well, we have to bear in mind, people, that in the past there have been weird situations. In as much as back in 2015, 2014, Tyson Fury failed a test for a PED test for nandrolone. Yeah? Anyway, 2-2s. Some random ass farmer came out and said and testified at the whole kind of court hearing for the PED thing, and testified on Tyson Fury's behalf, saying, oh, I supplied Tyson Fury with raw boar meat, and that's why he had the nandrolone in his system. Yeah? And that got Tyson Fury off the hook, or half off the hook. 2-2s. Later on, the man came out, Martin Carefoot, you can look all this up on the internet. Martin Carefoot came out after that, after having testified, and then said, I was touched. Yeah? He said, essentially, gangsters came round my house and told me to lie for 50 grand or whatever it was. Anyway, 2-2s. He comes out, sells the story. Next thing you know, he backtracks again and says, oh no, I made it up. So, my point is, people, if Tyson Fury's been involved to some extent with, just think about it. I mean, why would Martin Carefoot lie? Okay, maybe he made a few grand selling the story. That's possible, but I don't know. It's all I can do is speculate. I don't know, but what I'm saying is, it would make sense that Tyson Fury is doubling down with Kinahan if he has some level of involvement. Bottom line, yeah. wouldn't it? And it also makes sense, people who don't have any involvement, i.e. Michael Conlon can just cut strings. But when you're half in it with the guy, allegedly, then it makes sense that you continue, you know what I mean, you hold down the pattern until shit really kicks off. Because until the feds knock your door down, it's easy to, isn't it? You don't want to be until it gets to that point, until you're looking at a quick 100 piece, yeah. Until the feds talk about, until the feds sit you down and talk about how they're gonna pass you a quick 100 piece to hold, yeah. Oh, in fact, you know what the Americans are like. Never mind a 100 piece, they'll give you a quick 250 piece, yeah. We got 250 long ones for you to hold quick, yeah. 3 lifetimes to hold. Until they start talking about that, I guess it's easy knowing. Wait a minute. I've done some dodgy things with Kinahan in the past. We've touched Martin Carefoot. Yeah? I think I'll just stick here for a bit. So until the feds knock the door, it makes sense that Fury doing this. Control what you can control, i.e. the media. Keep it to a minimum. And ride this out until some convictions and all the feds start knocking. So, we are where we are. I'm disappointed as a fan, because in terms of the build-up, this shows me, the press conference shows me that the one we're going to get before the fight isn't what it was going to be, yeah? The fact that Dillian Whyte was able to be on the offensive just shocked me, but it's only because of what's happened in the last few days. That's what's changed the balance of power. Fury was on the offensive, Fury was wicking anything. Dillian couldn't say nothing, he was wicked. He was all the way wicked out, yeah? 100%. But now, Fury's just been... what can we say? I mean, you saw it for yourself. Let's not make... I mean, Fury fans out there, you man sit there and tell me, do you think that was a strong press conference from Tyson Fury? He sounded like he had somehow had his balls in a what they call it. Had his balls in a thing. In a clamp. he's 100%. It sounded to me like he had his balls in a clamp. And then you had Dillian Whyte mouthing off, giving it all the yammer. Yeah, Tyson Fury dug me. Tyson Fury didn't want it. Tyson Fury played too many games. I thought, what the fuck? How is Dillian Whyte talking this greasy and Fury letting Dillian Whyte off the hook? This was dead. So that, I believe, unfortunately, that's what's likely to play out now. Tyson Fury can't do nothing, can he? Now, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe come Friday he's going to be all mouthy again, but I doubt it. Because if he was, it would have happened here. And I also, from what I've heard, this is also a key reason they didn't do a head-to-head, if that makes sense. Yeah? The whole game plan was, okay, we'll keep Dillian and Fury separate, so there's less chance of, or there's less, for example, if they put Dillian and Fury head-to-head, it would look even more weird if they were being cordial, wouldn't it? So to save the reputation, okay, we'll do them separately. That way there's some sort of plausible deniability. Oh no, Fury hasn't been cucked by this recent news outbreak. No, it wasn't that. They just didn't interact together. No. Yeah, it was obvious to see. Fury was out here roasting the guy. I mean, you tell me, in a 30-minute press conference, Fury didn't say nothing that was negative about Dillian Whyte, which was shocking. Especially when you compare it to what's happened at the ticket selling event. Oh, this situation is dead for me. It's dead. I mean, part of me feels like, again, if I was in Tyson Fury's shoes, would I do the same? Probably. Yeah. End of the day, Tyson Fury's, the things that are at risk here are much more important than the YB's entertainment. But from a fan's point of view, this for me is a bit of a letdown. I'd much rather prefer, obviously selfishly, I'd much rather prefer for Tyson Fury to be doubling down and saying, listen Dillian, or better yet, coming out and saying, listen, yeah, I'm team El Trapahan, now what? Yeah? If you don't like it, what are you going to do? And Dillian, you're in love with some next big burly don called Dean White. Oops. Yeah? I'd much rather prefer to hear that. But in today's society, it just don't work like that. If Tyson Fury came out and said, I'm affiliated with the number one I'm affiliated with Europe's #1 trap star. He's gonna be dropped super quick from the network. But here we are. I mean, in my opinion, if what I've heard is correct, you can forget about any entertainment before the fight. The only entertainment we're going to get is on Fight Night, which I guess isn't a bad thing, but all in all, with Dillian Whyte missing the first press conference, and this really is what I was saying when I said, you have to take these things when you can get them. Because imagine if Dillian Whyte had turned up for the first press conference before the Kinahan news came out, it would have been a banger. Now we've lost that whole thing because of circumstances. It's a bit like when people talk about unification fights. Oh, I'm going to get the belts on my side first, then we can have the big fight. How many big fights have we missed? I remember, for example, Jared Hurd. It was supposed to be Charlo versus Jared Hurd. Oh yeah, I'm going to get the belts, then we're going to fight. 2-2s, Jared Hurd ends up losing. I think even Charlo ended up losing as well. It's like, he might as well just fought and lost to each other and made 10 times more money. Same principle. All this game playing and whatever else. But anyway, forget about the promotion. The promotion's dead now. That's what this showed me. There's going to be no bad blood kind of thing. Tyson Fury, in my opinion, has made that clear. Oh no, people shouldn't have bad blood. We're all meant to be professionals. Professionals? You was posting pictures of Dillian Whyte in his favourite... You were posting pictures of Dillian Whyte in Dean White's favourite knickers. Yeah? Them frilly ones. About professional... We're talking about Tyson Fury and Mr. Turn Up in a Batman suit. Talking about professional. Listen, that's what happened, you see. When that news dropped, promotion was killed. Anyway, let's see how it goes. At the end of the day, this time next week, the Fight Night's going to be here more or less, and that's really all that matters. But I'm a stickler for entertainment, bottom line. No doubt.